Dexter, you work for Capitalflow. How would you describe your job?
My job is quite varied. So I work on the commercial real estate side of things. So basically my role is, it's to do with investment properties, so buy-to-lets and commercial units. So I would work with the lending directors. So they would get inquiries or leads from individuals that are basically looking to buy either buy-to-let properties that they're looking to rent out, or commercial units where maybe a shop like Spar or something like that is moving into. And we would basically run that deal from cradle to grave. So valuations, getting it through credit, getting approval, running through legals, until drawdown.
So you are basically a midwife to the process, kind of.
Exactly, yeah.
Part of the Capitalflow kind of mission statement is to be kind of like an old style bank manager, where there's a kind of relationship with the client, as opposed to this kind of automated, faceless kind of form filling and this sort of online process that goes on. Do you find that alienating yourself if you're ever dealing in that kind of world?
Generally, the customer that the lending director is dealing with has direct contact to that lending director. So you're not calling in a 01 number and having to go through 3, 4, 5 steps to reach the person that you want to reach. Generally, you're straight to your lending director or your relationship manager. So generally, there's no issues.
What kind of qualities do you think you need to have to be able to work in your business?
I think you have to have an understanding for customers, what they're looking for, their business needs. And then I think sort of the second most important thing is building a relationship with the customer, that the customer knows if anything does go wrong, that they can contact you straight away, and it's not calling a number and trying to get through 3 or 4 different people, and issues take a long time to resolve. Because we are small and nimble, we're able to move and, do different things that the larger banks aren't able to do.
And what would you like the clients of Capitalflow that you deal with, what would you like them to say about you?
First of all, that when they speak to us, they are speaking to people who are making the decisions, and they're a call away from anybody who can make a final decision on anything. And then also, what I'd like them to see about us is how quick we can turn around decisions, and how quick we can go from application to loan drawdown in a very, very short space of time.
So you're kind of tailoring your product towards them,
yeah,
as opposed to their circumstances suiting your product.
Exactly.
So lending for small and medium-sized business in the wake of the crash in 2008 certainly had a reputation for being more difficult to access credit. And, is that true? Is that the context in which Capitalflow came out of, do you think?
Banks don't want to deal with smaller customers, and especially customers that are not what we would call a code 1 customer, where everything is squeaky clean and is a large business. They generally want to deal with the larger companies that are looking for 1 or 2 or 3 million or 4 million or whatever it is that's squeaky clean, that's either black and white for them. There's no sort of area of shaded gray, where some companies do fall into. A lot of companies would have gone through a hard time in 2008, 2009, and at Capitalflow we understand that. Sometimes the big banks don't. With them, it's you made a mistake here, you get punished for the rest of your trading life.
How do Capitalflow differ in their approach to the traditional banks?
I think a huge thing that we do differently, and it was actually funny, I was sitting down with a broker for coffee the other day, and we were basically explaining to her why we're different. And I think a huge thing that sets us apart from the banks is if we give you an answer of something that we can do, I would say 99% sure we can fulfill it. It's not based off if X person says yes or this department might say no. Generally, when you're speaking with people, you're speaking with the decision makers and people that are calling the shots, that are either can say yes and you can be fully confident that they can run with it, or it'll be a no and you can be fully confident that it will be a no.
And the sort of turnaround time between application and loan approval is quite quick.
It's extremely quick. So generally, depending on the deal and how sort of straightforward it is, in terms of turnaround time for getting a complete decision, you're looking anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks.
Okay, and in a retail bank, would that be longer, more rigid? Would it have to go through more departments? Is that?
Oh yes, it'll be a whole lot longer. I can't exactly give you an exact time frame, but I know it would be considerably more than what we would do. And another thing with sometimes the bigger banks is you could go through a 2-3 month process, and it could be stopped by the smallest thing that would bring you back to square one. Whereas, like I said earlier, if we give you a sort of a yes or a confirmation that we can do it, we're pretty sure that we can do it. And if for whatever reason it is a no, you're generally getting that no within 1 to 2 weeks' time.
And what kind of things do you have to consider when somebody comes looking for a loan?
Generally, what we're considering is the value of the property, the rental income that it generates, if it is a buy-to-let, or if it is a business that's going into there, we'll be looking at their cash flows and the sort of income that they generate to service the loan. And those are sort of your main aspects. There are sort of different aspects that then fall off that, but those would be your sort of 3 main aspects: the property, where it's located, the rental income that it generates, or the cash flow that the business generates to service the loan.
So it'd be fair to say that you're given a lot of kind of autonomy and discretion in terms of your decision making.
Yes, of course, and that is a major thing that Capitalflow offers that most other places don't offer, where you don't know who the real decision maker is.
Okay, so they're just some kind of faceless suit sitting there, and you may never get to actually meet them.
Exactly.
So Dexter, indeed, you do not come from Ireland. You are from Zimbabwe. How did you wind up here? Tell us a bit about that.
I was born on a farm in Zimbabwe, and went to a boarding school in Zimbabwe. But in and around 2001, 2002 time, we, like most white farmers, were evicted from our farms.
You were evicted from your farm. Okay, so this is under the Mugabe government, and they decided that they were going to redress the situation, and basically they showed up at your doorstep. Is that correct?
Yeah, so basically what you had is war veterans. So they would have been the guys that would have fought in the guerrilla war maybe 10, 15 years prior, who literally show up at your door, tell you have 24 hours to leave.
What is that like? I mean, that must be pretty scary.
Yeah, it is quite scary. I suppose I was pretty young at the time, so maybe it went over my head a little bit, but definitely on my father and mother's side, it was extremely scary. Even the country as a whole, because a lot of the people that we would have known are all farmers, so they would have felt the exact same effects as we did.
Okay, so you left Zimbabwe and you went to South Africa.
Yeah, exactly. So sort of like most Zimbabwean families, a lot went to South Africa, and a few went to Australia. So we went to a small sort of a quaint town called Port Alfred on the east coast of South Africa, where my mother and my stepfather set up an agro-processing business. And I went to Kingswood College for a couple of years in boarding school.
So you're living in South Africa and you decide to move to Ireland. How did that happen?
Yeah, so basically my stepfather was Irish, and he had met my mom in and around the time of moving between Zimbabwe to South Africa, and he just wanted to come home. So in 2005, he got a job in Limerick for a guy by the name of Pat Whelan Construction, and he came home and we all came with him.
Okay, so you have moved at this point from Zimbabwe to South Africa to Limerick. Okay, and whereabouts did you actually live?
So we lived in the country, just sort of outside of Nenagh, about 6-7 k's outside of Nenagh, in a very small sort of a community, which is completely different to sort of the gated communities in South Africa.
It must have been a bit of a culture shock for you.
Yeah, no, it was. It is a huge culture shock, because in South Africa, I mean, even the houses alone, you're either in a gated community or you have huge walls around your houses, and all the houses here were open. Just everything was completely different. Outside the school was exactly what looked like rugby posts, and I thought, geez, rugby's obviously a big sport here. But little learned did I know that it was hurling goals, and as well the school was in our final year. I would have come in sixth class, so fourth, fifth, and sixth were all in one classroom, which was completely different to my school in South Africa, where fifth class would have been split into two classes, and you nearly would have had between 100 and 120 kids. I came up to Dublin, where I started working for a small sort of a business. Basically, I was running the accounts, doing revenue returns, and everything like that. So it was basically just working for a small business. And as most small businesses know, your role is that, but includes everything else. And also in that time, I started studying finance in Dublin Business School.